Well, hello, everybody. My name is Brian Blackmore for DAVE.video. And this afternoon, we're going to be talking about the ELISA immersive sound technology from L-Acoustics. It's a very interesting DSP platform that allows for multi-dimensional sound, what the company calls hyper-real sound, for live and recorded applications. So the system was recently installed at Mount Paran Church in Atlanta. So we're going to get into that application just a bit. But with me today, our guests are Josh Maichele, is applications engineer for Houses of Worship for L-Acoustics. Josh, say hi.
Correct. Hey, Brian, how are you? Thanks for having me here today. I'm coming to you actually from Grand Rapids, Michigan, where I live full time.
All right. Thanks, Josh. Nice to see you. Next, we have Tim Corder. He's Strategic Accounts Director, Houses of Worship for Diversified, who is the integrator on the project. Say hi, Tim.
Hi, Brian. First-time caller, long-time listener. Glad to be here.
All right, good stuff. All right, and then David Mendoza is the technical director at Mount Paran Church in Atlanta, Georgia. Say hey, David.
Hey, Brian. Glad to be here.
All right, great. Thank you all for being with us today. So the first question is for Josh. Josh, tell us a little bit more about the ELISA sound system, the technology, why it's important, and why it had a particular application at Mount Paran Church.
Sure. Yeah. So ELISA is not exactly a new technology. We've been working on developing this and implementing it and releasing it into the wild for the better part of almost 5 years or more now. The technology as a whole really was designed because when you step back and you look at all of our auditory experiences in life, sound comes from many different directions, right? But we tend to localize that sound to where it's coming from. When we go to concerts and we go to all these different things, you start to realize that we're watching something on stage, but we're hearing it come from somewhere completely different. And there's this major disconnect between what's happening on stage and the auditory event that's happening. There's a myriad of other problems that really are posed by a traditional left-right system or even a mono. But one of the things we continue to talk about is that a traditional system right now is really dual mono. Where is everything that's important in your mix? You know, from a house of worship standpoint for us, where is the pastor? He's pan center. Where is acoustic guitar? Where is our worship leader? They're all pan center, right? So we have dual mono, and with that comes a comb filter, many other issues from that in terms of localization and such. And so what ELISA has been able to do and what the technology gives us is to be able to connect what we're seeing on stage with what we're hearing. When we can do that, we start to break down the walls, and really the technology automatically disappears. It doesn't become something that attracts attention. It becomes something that just becomes part of the experience and no longer is the sound system. It's what we're really seeing and hearing, just louder. And so when you look at that from a house of worship standpoint, you start to think about, wow, if I don't have this distraction of seeing pastor right here, but I'm hearing him from over here, right? If I don't have this distraction of hearing this amazing piano or this amazing choir in front of me, and it looks beautiful, but we're hearing it from way over here, or worst case scenario, if you're sitting way over there, you're hearing it from above your head or something to that effect. And I think those are probably things we're going to all talk about a little bit about what that technology's done for Mount Paran. But I guess in a nutshell, that's really what ELISA is and what it's doing for House of Worship for us, and why I believe it's a huge emerging technology that's really here to stay within the House of Worship sector.
It's really interesting, exciting new technology, new next steps in pro audio. So I'd like to bring Dave Mendoza in. Dave, can you just tell us a little bit about the Mount Paran project and what the goals were?
Yeah. So Mount Paran was interested in purchasing a new PA system after 15 years of using the same system since initial build of the campus. We were running into a lot of issues with intelligibility and balance, and we were looking for the solution that would bring us into the 21st century with the latest, greatest technology. And that was some of the main goals by leadership, and some of my team were interested in getting a better balanced mix in that format. And so as we go into searching for PAs and working with Tim Corder on what is the best solutions, we ran into a couple issues like sight lines. We have some great LED walls here at Mount Paran, and they hang on each side. And so there were a couple factors that decided the PA for us, such as sight lines, the inability to hang a traditional J hang, within our room, or was one of the factors that led to the Elisa technology.
Yeah, Dave, it's funny that you bring that up, because as we went through this, and Tim reached out to me, and we led initially with, if you remember, with the left-right design, and it became virtually impossible to find a way to give you the SPL and coverage that you wanted in the room, but also achieve those sightline goals so that everybody in the balcony, because a huge amount of your seating is in the balcony, was
Absolutely.
not impeded by loudspeakers dipping down into there. And there were some, I mean, Tim could probably speak to this. Tim, you also looked at some other technologies that weren't L-Acoustics driven,
Right.
but they didn't achieve everything you wanted either, right?
And that's what was so interesting about this process is, our conversation today is about, Josh, you just gave an intro to the kind of the transformative nature of being able to better connect what you see on stage with what you hear. But that's not really where where this loudspeaker system for Mount Paran started. Where this came into play is the same way in any other room. I've been involved in a lot of churches over the years, both as an end user and as an integrator. And, it starts with just trying to achieve good, consistent coverage, to have everyone wants a consistent experience. You want a very average spectral balance throughout the entire room. You don't want hot spots and cold spots. And David, that was part of your biggest challenge with the old system, was it had really reached a place where things were so, it's just the limitations of 15-year-old technology that ultimately led to a lot of people stayed out of the room during worship, right? I mean, I experienced that when I was there. You'd see a rush of people come in after worship was done, right?
Yeah. And that's one of the key points with this new technology. I mean, we had instances where, the first month into it, people are staying over for the next service because they want to hear the next worship set. And they don't want to leave because they want to listen. They felt a piece of heaven and they wanted to experience that again. And so that was the greatest feeling we experienced, man. I remember calling you saying, hey, look, we have this issue now. We need an overflow room.
Dave, I've got a question just so we get the context. You added the LED walls before the new sound system.
That's correct. Yes,
right?
Sir.
And so,
of course, like anyone, there's no such thing as too large of screens, right? So the screens, the LED walls were even larger than the original rear projection screens, which led to a challenge that as soon as we dug into this, we realized that any typical long length array that's 10 feet or 12 feet in length, even using smaller boxes and trying to kind of cheat the laws of physics to use small drivers and get a big sound, even in any of those scenarios, we were looking at a situation where, sitting in the room with David's leadership and a model, we're saying, goodness sakes, 25% of this room is going to have the part of the screen where the pastor's face is for the entire message. They're going to be blocked. And so I took that, Josh and I were collaborating back and forth on different ideas, and Josh kind of brought this, seemingly, he said, don't think I'm crazy for this, but what if we did Elisa in this room? And understand, for background, I have been, again, along the ride with L-Acoustics and the Elisa philosophy, honestly, before there was marketing speak to it, before there was, before the fully finished product that we see today. And I've believed all along that this could be a very transformative step to church leadership, because everyone talks about, common buzzwords these days are immersive and engaging, and we're trying to create an experience that is unique, that you can't get watching online, and to draw people into a live space and make them want to come back. And for years, the way you do that is with big LED walls on the sides of the stage. The way you do it is with color changing house light and breaking down the fourth wall of the stage. Well, so I've thought for a long time that this could be the thing. Candidly, I've always thought of this for black box church with a rock and roll band, and it's really gonna be a very whether we say high production value or a really contemporary church model. And so that's the thing that's the most interesting to me about Elisa. Solved a problem for Mount Paran that I've encountered a number of other times over the years without having this tool.
Tim or Dave, could you give us some context and show us some pictures?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I'd love to share some. Tim, if you have some, go ahead.
Go ahead. You go first.
Perfect. Yeah, I'd love to show you a little context here. This is a old picture of the old PA, and this is kind of what you're looking at prior. We have a big choir loft that you'll see is behind. This was what Tim was referring to, our traditional or contemporary 5-piece band that rock still contemporary worship. And so this is what we were using, and there was a delay ring, and we had a mono system in line as well. One thing to note is Mount Paran has transformed their worship over the years, and so the worship that we began and the style of music that we were doing when the campus was built was not and is not what we're currently doing now. We've reached a hybrid of contemporary and traditional worship that blends in real well. You have a 150-piece choir behind. So these are some of the pictures of the install. And as you can see in the back, you have a choir loft. And so...
And David, point out, the original main PA was actually, 25 feet upstage of where the pastor is from?
That is a very good point, Tim.
It provided no issues with feedback.
The first time I came to mix there on a Sunday, and I sat down at the console, and I saw all of this channel EQ on almost every channel of, cutting 200 hertz and 400 hertz and cutting 2K and I said, man, this all looks so aggressive. And so before rehearsal even started, I didn't know any better. I started relaxing. Surely I can get away with less EQ, this and that. And the first moment a live mic came on stage, 25 feet in front of that old PA, was like, oh, no, that EQ's there for a reason. Put that back as fast as I can.
Yeah. So we came forward 25 feet. We have an 8 praise team lineup. And so you can imagine the trouble that we were in the past, trying to make that maybe a headset, a lapel mic, a podium mic in front of that system, just nightmares that as an engineer you have to deal with, you have to encounter. Well, with this new technology, all that has been freed. And I see it as we're going from damage control to tone shaping. Now we're able to define the sound. We're able to create something, a mix from a well set up system. And so one thing to note as well, Brian, here's the amp count. So you had 3 full racks worth of amps. And this is our current setup now. On the right side is that's all the amps that we have enabled for the PA.
And David, didn't one of your pastors make a comment even about the current draw, the difference in your electrical bill? Yeah,
so he made a note. He's saying, hey, just so you know, this current system is a lot better on our electrical bill and our finances. So that was a smiley face and a happy face. And here, one thing I do want to note is the sub configuration as well as we open this up. So you have 4 flown subs at the center. Which when Josh was first tuning, I said, hey, I just want to hear it because, this is such a big room. Why are you only doing 4 subs here? And maybe Josh, you can explain the theory behind that. But I mean, it sounds like floor subs in the room.
Yeah. And I can speak a little bit to that. And actually I'll share my screen with you so you guys can kind of see the Mount Paran system, as we were as designed. And what you'll notice is, and when you see the pictures of the final room, the subs are actually behind the scrim. And so all you see is the scene system and the extension. So you see 7 arrays hanging across the front. But, we can get really deep into the physics and the math on why this works. But ultimately, where the things that we want to be center, things like our bass and our kick drum, they are in close proximity to where the subs are. And so there's an extreme amount of efficiency that is gained by that. And you can really get down to it when you do flown and ground subs and all this kind of stuff. There's a compromise by splitting subwoofers out, and that compromises efficiency, and to the tune of almost 9 dB. And so what I can do with 4 dual 18 subs in here is borderline concussive for a room that's over 2,400 people. I probably would have suggested no less than 10 KS28s in a standard left-right design here.
Amazing, Josh. So back to David. Dave, so you and the leadership of the church, you had other options. So what made you take a chance and go with this new technology for this and this new, kind of radical new design compared to what you had before?
Yeah, we did. We actually analyzed a couple options, different brands, different layouts. The biggest thing was the sightlines. The stewardship aspect is we enabled so much funds to make these LED walls happen. And so we wanted to honor that as the member comes to church and looks up. We didn't want a J hang in the middle of the screen, as Tim was saying. Pastor's center screen, and there's a speaker if I'm sitting at a seat in that. And personally, I had not heard the technology until I traveled up to Charlotte to hear Bon Iver. And when Tim brought it up, said, "Hey, we got this design. Check it out. It's immersive." My first thoughts were, "Oh boy, the learning curve. Oh boy, at Mount Paran, we don't do a midweek rehearsal. We do rehearse, but it's not a pre-planned. It's not a cue to cue. It's here are the songs that are laid out. Here are the stuff we're going to do. We're going to, Sunday morning rehearse." So my first initial worry was, Tim, how much learning curve is there? How much automation? How much am I having to learn and figure out that I don't have much time for? And so the first aspect was me going to Charlotte and hearing the system with Bon Iver. I was blown away, impressed. I mean, it was just such an immersive experience that I said, oh my gosh, if we can bring this to Mount Paran with 150-piece choir, 8 praise team singers, we have an orchestra. I mean, my mind just kept on going. And so the second step was, Tim, okay, how long is it going to take me to learn this technology? And Brian, being completely honest, it was really straightforward. You have a controller from Eliza, that's embedded into our Digico, which we can mention here soon. And it's pretty much grab and go. And so you're pretty much painting a picture as a front of house engineer. You have certain channels that come into your console, and now you're able to pan them and throw them into the scene system, which is the first 5 hangs that you see within our pictures. I'll share that with you here, Brian. So you have what's called the scene system. And so the first 5 hangs centered, you're able to locate those audio within your map. And so the learning curve was minimal. I mean, for our culture, it fit just right. When you throw that choir and you're able to pan them and use the parameters that Eliza gives you, which is distance, the width, the elevation, you have so many tools at your hand. As a front of house engineer, it should get you excited and say, wow, now I'm the true artist behind this console, and I'm able to paint a picture for the people sitting in the room. And one thing to know, when Tim came and mixed our Christmas show, which is a big deal here at Mount Paran, we do a full week of rehearsals, and he did some automation with some rehearsals and stuff. And all that automation means is, hey, I want these channels to start here out wide, and then I want them to end at the center or make this moment. Man, he had maybe 95% of the room standing with their arm raised in worship by just a simple tactic of automation of channels, bringing them forward. And Tim, I don't know if you want to elaborate on that.
Well, and it's important because all of that, as a mix engineer, how much work do we have to do historically to make, especially, I mean, David, you stress me out just in talking about the input count and the amount of channels. And ultimately, you guys do so many different styles, like a lot of churches, of everything from gospel flat out, Brooklyn Tab style, choir driven, to Southern gospel, to contemporary Hillsong and Bethel and Elevation, and you name it, anything in between. And initially, when I was even learning about Elisa over the last 5 years, so much of the common feedback you'd hear is, well, this would be great, but you're going to have to run the time code, right? And this is going to require days of rehearsal, because in other markets, when you think immersive, I think a lot of people would certainly think of Broadway and the Vegas shows, and people like Cirque du Soleil. And, obviously in that world, it is a highly scripted hit play, and the technology runs. That's not how Mount Paran operates, and that's not how most churches operate. And so that's what's unique about, these emerging technologies is, thankfully, the loudspeaker manufacturers are partnering with the audio consoles so that while there is an Elisa interface off to the side, and you can grab a mouse and you can dig deeper into things, ultimately, everything David just described was all done on the Digico console, and it was all any automation. I mean, we're just talking about snapshots. We're just talking about I place things where I want them and I hit store, and when I recall that, they're going to come back. So it's really fast and easy.
Could you describe that a little bit more, Tim and Dave? So does the Elisa interface come up on one of the Digico screens, and you can drag and drop, or tell us more?
Let me share this first picture. This is the Elisa controller. And so this is actually showing you left to right, you're seeing a visual representation of the canvas. And understand, because we don't have surround speakers in the room, it's essentially covering that 60 degrees area, from left to right. Obviously, if we added more speakers, we could, in theory, go as far as 360 degrees around the room if we wanted to. And every one of those blue dots that you see on the screen are an individual input. So it could be a choir microphone. Well, the thing that's interesting to see here is notice that they're not all in the same plane. Some are pushed further back from others. You have in when you're mixing on a Lisa, you essentially have, and David referenced it, but I'll give just a little more context to it. You have the ability to pan things. We've had pan for many years, right? We've already established most of your important inputs get panned right up the middle. And it's not a tool that you can use. So how much work do you do with a choir, for example, or how much psychoacoustic or special waves plugins do you need in order to try and get gain before feedback? Because you have 12 open microphones that are trying to pick up the 150-person choir. In this world, you can take all of those microphones and spread them out left to right across the canvas. And now all of a sudden, when the left side of the choir sings, you can feel it coming from the left side of the stage. When the left side sings and the right side echoes back, you feel that. You can actually hear that the same way that you would if you were standing 20 feet in front of the choir. But the other thing that's interesting is you notice that some of these inputs are pushed further back from others. That is called depth. And essentially, this was one of the biggest surprise things to me. I mean, candidly, Josh, plug your ears. I've been hearing about the room engine, for a long time, and as a function of Elisa. And honestly, I didn't know how it would really matter in modern worship. I thought it was one of those things that was just a cool marketing feature. And and one more thing, it does this. What that depth allows you to do is to take an input and move it closer to you or further away from you. And as you push it further away, what's happening is it's pushing it further into a room engine that is essentially a customizable, very high channel count reverb engine. If you use a reverb on an audio console, it's a left-right reverb. So I can place it on the left side of Elisa and the right side of Elisa. But if I use the room engine, it is going to discreetly bring the artificial sound out of all of the channels in a very authentic way. So this was actually with our project manager. The first time he heard the system in the room, we had a spoken voice playing, and we were pushing it away further in depth and then bringing it back. And it was so convincing to him that it's like you're used to when something gets further away. It is more reverberant. It loses some of its high frequencies. There's those sort of characteristics. So what that means is that you have the ability now as a tool in the course of worship to say, if it's a choir-driven song, bring the choir forward. And if there's a praise team, maybe they're supplementing or they're just adding some reinforcement to the choir, you can push them further back. And now it does feel like the choir is closer to you, the vocals are further away, so that by the time we get to the big final chorus, it really feels like when you're in the room, it's hard to tell the breakdown of where the choir versus the congregation, where one starts and the other ends, because it's just coming from all around you.
Fascinating.
And that's why I tell people it's inspiring to sit in the room, because you can be in an empty room with tracks and hear this system, but it's a totally different thing to be in the room with 2,000 people and hear that feel.
Josh, do you want to expand on the room engine?
Yeah, so Tim nailed it on what the room engine is, but I think it's important to understand that what he was explaining about the location is that the engine has precedence, so it sounds natural. It actually emits reverb from each individual stem coming in from its location. And that's what happens in the real world, right? And so it is less of an effect and more of a tool, or more of another color in our palette. You hear us talking a lot about this paintbrushes and palettes and us being an artist, and I think that's important also to remember that this tool has given David and his team the ability to be musicians, to be artists again, instead of just the gatekeepers of frequencies. And one of the other parameters that they have at their disposal, which we haven't really touched on, is width. And so each individual input also has the ability to have width in the system here. And there are a couple other parameters. There is elevation as well if you were to have overheads, but we don't have overheads or surrounds there, and they're not really necessary for what we're doing there. But the ability to add width means that I can take an acoustic guitar and make it really, really wide. But I could take, let's say, an electric guitar and make it really, really narrow or something to that effect, right? And this is a creative tool. There really is no right or wrong to what you're doing with it. It's you finally getting to be able to be an artist and decide you want to do something cool and see if it works.
So Josh, I'm showing them here that, there's some inputs that are strictly a circle, and then there's that have this line that's extending out. That line is representing the width of that individual source. So you see, most of the sources are pretty narrow in this particular snapshot, but some of them are, significantly wider. And that's another one of those tricks. Again, being able to take something wide and you use it wide for the bulk of the song, and then say when the electric guitar takes a solo, you make it narrow and you pull it forward. And all of a sudden you haven't changed amplitude, but you have completely changed your mix. You've improved it. You featured something, and it just introduces this whole other tool that, again, we've never had access to before. So in Mount Paran setup, here's the screen that we've just been looking at the close-up. Josh, I'm sorry, I cut you off.
No, you're good.
And I was just going to say, you can actually kind of see, I don't have the best picture of it here, but you can kind of see that what happens on the console side is that all of your pan, your width, your depth, your elevation, if you were using a system that had, speakers up over the audience, which you could have speakers overhead, those parameters are all able to be controlled here on the console, and they track in real time with, if I pan something and move it over here on the console, I would see it move on the screen. So there's times where it's faster to grab the mouse and you want to reach over and you want to play with it, with the mouse. You can do that. There's times where it's faster to, you can create presets and you can use the snapshot engine of the console. No time code required, no special tricks. It's just like using the console that you've always had. There's just 4 extra parameters on every channel. And it's really, really easy. And that's the thing. I can tell you, I pushed it hard. When I came for Christmas, there was 4 nights of rehearsals, 2 show days. There were, probably 30 or 40 snapshots, a snapshot for every song as a starting point with faders and mutes and pans, essentially. And I never had, it just works. And it earned my trust as an engineer very quickly of how seamless the process is. I can echo for David that, knowing their Sunday morning experience and how short the timeline is, you need something that's easy. You need something that works, because if it's cool, but if it adds complexity and adds risk, that's a much more difficult conversation value to decide, is the risk worth the reward? And in this case, it really feels like, we just have a natural extension of, how we've mixed for a long time to a different level.
David, there's a lot of technology here. That I'm sure some of it senior leadership understands and most of it they don't. But I wonder if you could just wrap up and tell us what's been the response. How has leadership responded? How has the congregation responded?
Yeah, one thing to note here, as Tim talked about the Christmas thing, our senior pastor here at Mount Paran is an electric guitar player, classical acoustic guitar player. So I feel like I have the benefit and the advantage than most other tech directors that can sit in their room, that I can sit in the room with Pastor Cooper and say, hey, here are the parameters that I have. Here are the new tools. As he checks out new pedals and he understands how, technology is evolving over the time, I have that edge to be able to sit down with him and say, hey, we have elevation, we have distance, we have width. You're playing that guitar, but in that mix, I really want to bring you up. And if you're doing a special moment, we can sit there and dialogue, which gives me the benefit of enabling these kind of technologies here at Mount Paran. And the leadership response, I can attest to this, and Tim will smile at this, but our financial pastor, the final sign-off guy, was there that Thursday night when we rehearsed. And I think he got about, what do you say, Tim, 30 seconds of it? No more than a minute. Walks in and just, you can see the biggest smile on his face. Like, I can't wait for the congregation to hear this. It's just going to be tremendous, the experience. And the fact that somebody like that maybe is not technology inclined is able to, notice the difference of wow, I can hear it. I can picture what the response of the people is going to be was tremendous. I mean, it was the biggest win we had. And so as the people rolled into the room, I mean, night and day difference for everybody was the response. I can hear everything. I can understand what they're saying. Wow, I'm just so engaged was the general feeling that I felt for months. And so here at Mount Paran, we went away from a DB discussion. And so that's one thing to note, as you sit in technical director position where every weekend you're getting bombarded on, it's too loud, it's way too loud. I don't know what we got to do, but we got to bring that DB count down. A properly laid out system like this let us move away from the DB conversation. Now we're moving into the energy conversation. Are you really pushing out the energy that we want to create in this moment? What's our goal as we sit down with the worship pastor? What's our goal to create with these songs? Is there any specific moment that you want to highlight? Is there a moment we want to create? So it's really brought this creativity to our team and saying, okay, let's sit down. What songs are we doing? Great. Where can I make specific moments? Where can I get the crowd, fully immersed in worship and then bring it back down and create these energy moments? And so that's key to note with a system like this versus, where we were in the fact of I'm not coming into service until after worship because it's just out of control. And so, yeah, I just want to say thank you to Tim for that. And Tim, you can attest a little more to that.
Well, I was just gonna add the part that we hadn't talked about in this, but certainly my friends in the industry who've seen this system go in, immediately the first response is, well, this must be nice, but man, this must there's 7 hangs instead of 2. Like, goodness sakes! I mean, David, this must have been twice the cost of a traditional system. And that's the wildest part of this whole thing is, the timing of this really coincided with a new box that came from L-Acoustics, the A15 loudspeaker, which is what's used through the majority of this system. And that allowed us, as wild as it is to say, this system was a single-digit percentage difference in cost versus any of the left-right options we were looking at, because we're distributing our SPL horizontally rather than vertically. We're putting more arrays in and making each array really just contribute a portion to the whole rather than 2 arrays having to carry the entire room. And so that end result became, well, this is a no-brainer if it's such an incremental difference in cost. Even if we didn't use all of the technology side of it, we just solved the sightlines. And that was a win in and of itself. It really was in that first week or two where senior leadership realized that all the creative benefits were a bonus. That's the thing everyone's most excited about. But that's just the icing on the cake, because at the end of the day, there isn't comb filters all over the room. There isn't consistency problems like there used to be. It's the most, I would argue it's one of the most cohesive sounding rooms, especially from the balcony to the floor to all of these different areas across the entire spectrum. And that's credited first and foremost to the new tools we have at our disposal of how, Elisa executes in the room.
That's
fantastic.
fantastic.
And even the weight, I'd like to make a note of the weight. I mean, we looked at, how much weight on the building and stress on the architectural structure of the building where we were. I think we were at 13,000 pounds, if I don't remember incorrectly. And now we're about a half of that with even more horsepower, more intelligibility. So that's something to note as well with this system.
Yeah, and it's more efficient from a power perspective as well. So
yeah.
That's fantastic. Guys, we're going to have to leave it there for now. So the new Elisa hyper real immersive multi-dimensional sound technology from L-Acoustics. Fascinating conversation, guys. So I just want to say thank you again to Josh Maichele from L-Acoustics, Tim Corder from Diversified, the integrator on the Mount Paran system, and David Mendoza, tech director at Mount Paran Church in Atlanta. Thank you guys for joining us today on DAVE.video. I hope we can do it again sometime.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you.